I anticipate every split that I made to look just like this. Good morning. It's the day after Easter Sunday. I trusted everybody had a good Easter. We did. I hope y'all did too. I want to get back into the bee yard a little bit and want to talk to you a little bit about what's going on. So you saw me do splits 2 weeks ago. Honestly, it was about 16 days because that puts us to queens hatching today. If the bee calendar fell right, that's how that's going to be. I don't want to go into those donor hives and look for queens right now. If those queens are hatching, I want all that to be done within the colony. Let those queens acclimate, let those queens, they still have to fly and mate. I don't want to be in there disturbing and breaking things apart and hunting for a virgin queen and taking a chance on creating a problem for those bees or those queens mating. When I'm talking about mating, all of those donor hives that we took splits from, naturally we talked about leaving fresh eggs, them pulling cells, going back in 9 days, removing cells, leaving 2 of the pristine cells that were capped. That is to where we're at now. So we don't want to go in and disturb anything that they've got going on. It's crucial that those queens fly and mate. And when I'm talking about mating, they're actually going to have to leave that box. We now have drones that are flying in and out. Lots of times on these bright sunshiny days especially, you'll see them leave around 10 a.m. They're starting to return at 2. They're going to a drone field. These queens fly and they find these drone fields, and it's a saturated area with male bees, the drones. They're in hopes of being mated from 15 to 20 times according to everything that has been observed in beekeeping and written down. Once they mate with a drone, that drone falls dead. The mating all takes place in these yards in the air. If you ever get to witness, it's very cool. Sometimes you'll see these young queens will come out and an amount of bees will go with them. That young queen may fly her first trip and hit a limb close by your hives, and you see this swarm of bees bag up or ball her, and then they just almost immediately break apart, and you see lots and lots of drones in this swarm. A lot of times that queen slips out and she goes ahead and gets mated and returns back to the hive, and you see this little swarm just slowly deteriorate, falls apart. If you can catch that, you can go and look at your hives and see the ones that they came from. That's going to be the one most active and revved up and bees in the air like they're trying to swarm, but it's kind of a reverse situation. It's not bees necessarily pouring out, it's a rush of bees returning. Bees sitting on the landing board, fanning. You know, she's back home, or we're waiting for her to hit the deck to come in, but they're all communicating. But there will be most of the time a large host of drones in the air in confusion. The mating process can be 4 days. I assume that it could take her a couple of weeks to get this done, dependent on weather. As you can tell, it's in the 60s right now. Just mass cloud cover. Bees aren't very active. Most of the bees are locked into their colonies and staying put. So what I do want to show you today is it's a good time to go back to these splits. I don't necessarily want to see anything other than comb production. These bees got feeders put on them the day that the splits were made. They utilized that feeder. I fed them approximately 7 days ago. So that's roughly 2 gallons of feed that these bees have had in this time length. When I put the second feeder full in there, they had already started drawing on the foundation that had no comb. That's good. That means they're expanding. That they're going to keep her fresh comb in front of her. They'll keep a honey halo above. They'll have pollen stores on those frames. What I expect to find today is that I'm hopefully can put on I use a mid super as my secondary box, but I put a Queen Excluder over the deep hive body. I want her to utilize 9 frames during the honey production part of the season. So with that being said, I've brought some things. Naturally, I've brought the Queen Excluders to lock them into the deep boxes. I'm probably going to leave the feeder in the bottom, dependent on the weather. You know, this time of year you can't count on it. It can fall apart, rain, thunderstorms. We get what we get, right? So if they've got a tank of feed in the box with them, they can continue to produce wax and brood and grow. So I think we're going to add supers today. I do a method that most everyone, some of you new folks haven't heard about it. It's called checkerboarding. So from my dead outs, if you will, my lost hives over the winter, I have went in and saved the frames, the comb, and some of these frames actually have honey left in them. So here's a frame that's got capped honey. Got it on both sides. I've dropped it to the outside of the box. There's one on the far side of the box, the same thing. It's a capped frame of honey. These have been in the deep freeze. Now I've gotten them out and they're pretty well thawed. It doesn't really freeze, but it really solidifies. Between each of these, I put in a frame with foundation only. It's called checkerboarding. So my next frame has comb drawn, both sides. You go to the next one, another frame, foundation only. The next frame, comb, empty comb that I have had stored. You follow that format all the way through the box. What this does, when I put that Queen Excluder down, this honey, this comb, the odor of the bees that were on these frames will aid you in pulling the bees up through the Queen Excluder. When the bees start poking their heads up through the excluder and realize that they can naturally access all of this, they respond better to the comb. There's a reason now, I guess, if you will, that they will pull up in there and utilize that comb and that honey. And so now you've got them in a second super. And my goal personally to push them into honey production is to keep them out of every super above this. Now, I think you saw me when we first started these YouTube videos removing Queen Excluders, and when I do, that mid super is full of honey. That drops on top of the box minus the excluder and allows them to have that whole medium for winter stores. So you set these bees up to create their honey along with yours. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go out to a hive. I'm going to clean this excluder. Just this one isn't bad. I've actually started. I've got a Queen Excluder tool. I think Jason can tell those little notches in the blade on that side are equal spaced. The other side has just a hive tool edge on it. If you run on the side without the bars, it takes off your propolis, your comb. Then you go to the notches and you'll see how it is riding those bars exactly, and you're catching that comb and propolis down in here that you otherwise wouldn't get to, or you fold over when you're trying to get all of that removed. Now, if you have anything on this other side, you just take your blade side and work your bars. And that excluder is clean enough. Let's say that you're first time using one of these, you've been to a store, you've purchased a Queen Excluder. Remember, these are metal. These are made in a fabrication shop. So they're spot welded in the corners, but my point is this metal comes to your fabricator with a film of oil on it to prevent any rust that could crop up. You want to clean them. Hot, soapy water, wash them, rinse them with clean water, set them in the sun and allow them to dry. If you're in a hurry, you can blow dry them with your air compressor, but get them dry and then they are ready to be installed. So Jason and I are going to suit up and we're going to go look at some of these splits that we made and see if the progress is where it constitutes us putting these boxes on. So hang tight and we're going to roll that beautiful bee footage. Okay, we've gathered up the super that I showed you with the checkerboarded frames. The longer it sits here, that bee just came up in it and came out through the excluder. This is one of the splits off of a donor hive. As you can tell, it's the temp's coming on up. They're starting to be more active out here. I can tell. You can look at these landing boards. They're coming in with pollen this morning. Life is good in the spring to be a bee. Now, I can almost tell you just from what you're seeing with me, here's a little fresh white wax. They pulled that right up through the hole in the inner cover. Remember, I don't have a Queen Excluder right now. I have to be a little bit concerned about the Queen. She could be up here. She could be up on the inner cover. If you'll notice, here's our drones. These were probably drones that we transferred on the comb. Some of you folks may not know this. These do not sting. They cannot sting. Their entire purpose in life is to mate with that queen. That is all they do. Eat, hang out, look to mate, and then their deal is done. So here's a pretty gold drone in the same box. There he went. You notice that flew right by the camera, and probably you can almost tell when they take off. They it's a Harley Davidson versus a little scooter. They got a vroom to them when they leave. We're going to open them on up, evaluate their brood box for comb and space. Oh yeah, that is a perfect picture of a healthy split. I'm proud of that. I've got bees down in the feeder. I think I can still see some feed in the bottom. I am going to show you. I can lift this and tell I still have some syrup in the bottom of the feeder. This particular frame right here was foundation only. We're going to lift it, check progress on it. And look at this. Now that's two gallons of feed. She is already, they have pulled the comb in 2 weeks. She has been on it. She's laying in it. There's the brood. There's the larva. It's the dark out. I don't have enough light to tell you there's eggs. There are. So there you can tell the progress. This was strictly a frame of foundation, no drawn comb. They've done that much with this one. They've already had her on it. I don't see her on it right at the moment, and that's fine. I'm not looking for her. I know she's here. I'm going to ease it back down where it goes. We're going to go over here. I'm going to pull the outside frame. It has foundation only, but they're working on it. They're up here drawing comb. This has, it could be nectar. I would be more apt to tell you that it is syrup. You can tell bees are coming over to this side, but they haven't necessarily started their comb. Now, here's another little tip for you. We're fixing to add a box to these bees. They'll continue doing what we want them to do if we allow them to utilize the space that they have. Now you can really tell they are all over this. So when I filled up the feeder tank for the second time, I swapped these frames around. This frame had nothing on it, and I moved a frame so that they would respond to it. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to put their comb, they don't have brood, I'm going to put their comb where the one in my left hand was. Okay? I can look in at this frame and I can tell they're sitting brood there. Okay? I want them to finish this frame, and they will. So they've already got it started. I'm going to turn it on them, and I'm going to put that foundation right up against that frame that's loaded with bees. Okay? So we're going to clean up their top bars a little bit. We're going to get them ready for this excluder. If you leave this comb, they're going to continue it right through the excluder. You don't want them making comb between it and the frames. It's going to happen. There's not anything you can do to stop it other than adding this box is going to slow these bees. It's actually going to expand these bees' work area. They'll respond to that by moving up and building comb on the frames above them. So I got no worries about putting down an excluder right now. Metal band up, you can tell the difference. Wire side crossbars go down. metal band up. That's where your super sits. Here's our super. We've already talked about we're kind of tricking them to pull bees up through the excluder. They're going to come right on up into this. But remember one thing, had you have used a brand new Queen Excluder that you cleaned and took care of and added it for the first time, the controversy is, did I just put on a honey excluder? My bees won't come through it. It's a tool. If you use it as a tool and use it correctly, bees will pull up through it and go to work. If you don't have comb, well, I don't have comb to put up there to do that checkerboarding thing, to make that happen. That's okay. Every one of these bees that are stuck on this inner cover are now fixing to be flipped over and have full access above the Queen Excluder. In order for them to go down, to go out, they're going to have to go through those bars. As soon as they start going through those bars, they're going to understand, okay, this isn't that big a deal. This isn't a barrier. We can work through it, and they will. Another tip, I could have went to the outside and got that frame that had just piles of bees but no brood on it. Held it to the side, set my super up, if it was empty foundation only, above a Queen Excluder, and just shake that frame off in that empty super. Just slide them over, excluder, super and all, put the frame back, slide it back closed. Now you've got them up there, you've got them trapped. Their only way to go out is through the excluder. And they're going to learn that. They're going to accept it. So don't be afraid to use these. They're, like I said, they are a tool. They can be used for a whole bunches of different reasons, other than keeping her out of your honey supers. It's money well spent. When you get to the extracting stage, you're going to come out and you're going to pull your honey supers off. There is nothing more aggravating than finding 3 or 4 frames of brood up in your honey supers, because at that point in time, you have got to swap frames down, consolidate frames of brood, and take away honey. Well, you just created yourself some unnecessary work. These excluders will do this job for you without costing you extra time. Just, you know, I really urge you to learn how to use them. And I think once you understand that it is an aid to you to use these, you're going to really like it. It'll become second nature for you to do this. And it's just going to benefit you all the way around. You can tell the bees that have already transferred off of this lid down into that super. I'm going to drive them off that comb. I started to bang them down in there, but they're probably going to get a little unhappy shortly anyway due to the cloud cover. What you can look, it's pretty cool. If you look in this menagerie of bees, now the drones look like they've kind of went on back in the box or flown. Here's one left up here. So you got drones in all this. You've got young bees in all this. You got these little bitty small, I call them wet bees. They're still wet behind the ears. Real small young bees. Their color's not real strong yet and their color's not faded. Here's a new bee example right here. That bee is not very old. So it's just, you know, a lot of all of your questions, I should say, can be answered by spending a little time with them, looking at them, thinking about, well, why do they look like this? Why do they look like that? Why is that bee smaller? Why is that bee lighter colored? They are all sisters. Every one of them, they're all sisters. So we're going to knock a few drones that we see. We're going to let them fly so we're not trapping them, because we know the outcome of that. We're going to set this lid back. We're going to work it around. We're going to pick up our trash. We do not want to throw this down in the bee yard. And I think, time permitting and weather, and my awesome camera dude and his fancy shooting stick, will return to the donor hives in about a week, and I hope that we can show you some returned new queens. If you notice, sometimes you're going to see me take that lid and bounce it out in front of this box. I do that because their fall into that grass is a whole lot more forgiving than the fall onto those frames. If there's a lot of bees present, it serves the same purpose. If there's not, just knock them out on the grass in front. They'll pick up and fly back in. We've got a few more of these to do yet. I think that every one of these split hives are to the same stage as this one. If so, I have brought the supers, the excluders, and the supplies needed to make these changes for them. I'm almost brave enough to tell you this one's exactly the same. I don't think it really has the population the other does, but let's just see. And I guess that's what I get for talking out of turn. There's a ton of bees still here, and they have combed their frames. Excuse me. You can tell, same scenario. Here's old Mr. Drone, freeloader. One job to do. They're not out doing it, and they should be. Swarms have been pretty prevalent the last week and a half. Our temperatures are just increasing. If you'll look down in that, Jason, I'm telling you, that's awesome. Let me show you a frame that I switched for these bees last week when I filled up their tank. So these two were switched. This one had been being worked on, this one had not. This one had one side combed, they've combed the other. This is what happens when you motivate them and make them do what you want them to do. Now, you'll notice here is a cup started. It was not what we want them to do. I don't think they would have turned that into a queen cell, but they could have, because these bees are packed. This box is packed. It could have took a super 2 days ago. If you hold these bees crowded, see them down in here on the side, on the box in the corners, they're through the centers of every frame. They're cleaning up their feed and they're utilizing it. Okay, I'm going to take this one again and I'm going to move it on them again. That little patch of brood that you saw, I just moved it away to the edge. That isn't a big deal at all. There's so many bees in this box, they'll spread over here and they'll get on that brood and they'll keep it warm. I do think I will go get the feed and fill this feeder up. And of course, I'm gonna grab another box just like this one. I just wanted you to see, I anticipate every split that I made to look just like this. So I've gone from 4 frames of bees with a queen to 8 frames full of bees, comb, and everything's going. They're congested. We're going to now add that second story, Queen Excluder on her, and we're going to push these bees towards honey production. These feeders will come out the next time that I visit to check the progress on the mid boxes. A frame will be moved over, a frame of foundation dropped in. I will check that top mid box. If that mid box is being worked to the point that this is, so say 80%, feeder is going to be gone, frame added for the 9th frame and expansion. Our mid box will be here, just like this one. At that point, I'm putting these bees into honey production. No more feed for them. We're going to be mid-April and they're going to go straight into honey production. So now our host hives, our donors, as well as our splits, are going to make me honey this season. So I hope that what I've done and what I've said educates you on how I do this. I always tell you, if you've got a better way to do it, I'm always open to hear it. I think people should and always experiment and try new things. This has worked for me for about the past 4 years. I've had and seen great results with it. I'm satisfied. It's the way that I will continue to do it until the bees change a program for me. So once again, thank you for watching. Hit that subscribe bell. We appreciate all y'all's comments. Keep them coming until we get to see you again. Roll that beautiful bee footage.